What seems effortless and easy for you is probably somebody else's, like, oh my gosh, this is the hardest thing in the world. You don't need to have your arms stretched up all the time because I just have to keep going so much higher. No, look around at eye level. Where can I serve? Keep it light, keep it easy breezy, right? Because it doesn't need to be hard. So ego is actually the one that looks really gross and it comes disguised a lot of times as humility. Oh no, not me. Not me. No, that's ego. Let's step into true humility. True humility, it takes so much humility to say, thank you. I agree. I am really good at that. And that's one of the gifts that I was given. And this is how I'm so grateful I get to use this. Welcome back, or welcome to the Conscious Investor Podcast, the show where we talk about health, mindset, and wealth building strategies. I'm your host, Julie Holly, and I am thrilled about today's topic because so often we cannot rate ourselves as a 10. Most of the time, if I were to ask you, wow, how'd you do on that project? Or what do you think of that meal you just cooked? Or how you're doing as a parent or a spouse? Most of the time, you probably rate yourself as like, well, it's probably like 60, 70%. How do I know this? Because I coach and I hear it. And today I want to dive into how can we see ourselves in the fullness of who we've created to be? How can we see ourselves as that 89, 8, 9, 10, I'm thinking 80, 90, 100%. How can we see ourselves in that way? And what is the cost of us not seeing ourselves in that way? Because there is a cost to it. We're going to dive into that in just a moment. But first, as always, I want to give a super grateful shout out. Becca T22 took time to leave an honest rating and review. And she says, amazing podcast. Love the podcast. Love this podcast. And I learned something new every time I listen to it. Julie has been my business coach, and I've gained a lot of wisdom, guidance, insight through that. She's always a joy to talk to. I especially appreciate her boldness and her faith. Thank you so much, Becca T22, for being an avid listener, for taking time to leave an honest review. And oh my gosh, it's such a gift to work with you. And I'm so excited because your business is going to shift the world. And I'm so excited for that. By the way, I am launching some coaching opportunities. I might as well add this in there right now. I am preparing for 2025, and I am so excited. I've been beta testing some material. I've been doing some different activities over the last several months to see how can I support conscious investors more powerfully. And so I'm going to have a few different coaching options to meet each of you in so many different facets and capacities. And it feels kind of effortless to me because it's how I'm created. It's what I'm created for. And so all that to say, stay tuned, make sure you're following or subscribed to the show so that you don't miss out when I release those opportunities to you. But there is an opportunity already on the table, and that's for you to come to the Conscious Investor Growth Summit. And I really want this to be a personal invitation from me to you, conscious investor. So often I think events, they turn into this big deal, and we can feel so disconnected from the headliner of the event or from the speakers at the events and from all of that. But I have created the Growth Summit with so much intentionality. And the intentionality is connection, meaningful growth, meaningful learning with really high level people. And that's you. I know, conscious investor, in today's episode, we're really going to deal with a lot of how you might not be seeing the fullness of who you are. But this is a place where, we're just grounded, down to earth, highly successful, highly motivated people who want to get together. And I want to get together with you, which is why I hired an amazing event planner to help me out this year so that I could be present with you. I want to break bread with you. I want to cold plunge with you. I want to go on a hike with Jessica D'Angelo and you VIPers. I want to enjoy the evenings with offsite mixers that we've arranged. I want to go to dinner with you. Like, do you hear? I'm like, Conscious Investor, I'm so excited to hang out with you. And if you are feeling that, like, you should be feeling that because I care about you. And that's why I create this event. And I love, love, love connecting conscious investors who I have relationships with other conscious investors where you haven't met, but because I know both of you, I can say, oh gosh, they have to meet. They're going to, they're really going to be able to support each other. And I really can't connect to you if we haven't met. So you can head on over to 3keysinvestments.com and you can schedule a time on my calendar for us to actually meet and have a phone call. I feel like I've been a little less available over the last several months as I've been doing a lot of beta testing, if you will, a lot of developing, a lot of it's just been a lot of R&D taking place. And I needed that time to be able to have the cerebral bandwidth to be able to be present in the research and development. And hey, it's time. It's time to come out of the cocoon and it's time to, really make myself far more available so that we can, get to know each other. So go pick up your tickets for Conscious Investor Growth Summit. If you want to connect up before then, head on over to 3keysinvestments.com and you'll be able to get onto my calendar. We'll be able to chat and let's dive in. I know. I always spend the first 5 minutes, I apologize, before we dive in, but there's so many cool things to tell you about. Okay, now I'm doing it again. Here we go, Conscious Investor. You may have recalled that I invited you to join the Passage to 2025 cohort, and it has been such a cool experience. I'm not into mass groups, large groups, just like the event is 150 people. The cohort is specifically designed for a small group. And as we're meeting together in one of our recent meetings, I asked the members, I said, why don't we go through and will you rate yourself on X scale of 1 to 10? How would you rate yourself? And one of the members gave himself a 7. And I'm like, okay, let's dive into that. Like, why is that a 7? And where, and this is something that was so systemic. 75% of the members of the small cohort resonated and landed and were underrating themselves. And they were putting themselves as a 7, as a 6. And the reason is, well, I can always do more. I can always be better. I dropped the ball on this, or maybe they didn't drop the ball and they were still giving themselves a lower grade. And a lot of times we're doing that to ourselves and we're actually inhibiting and sabotaging ourselves. So what do we do about that? Because I am certain, one, have you noticed, Conscious Investor, that I don't use the term high performer as often as I used to? There's a reason why, because in so many conversations with you, Conscious Investor, I have noticed that when I say, oh yeah, well, you're a high performer. Oh, no, I'm not. No, that's not me. And so it's interesting because you are a high performer, but you don't see that in yourself. Let me give an analogy on that for just a moment. If you had a bottle, and I happen to have like this little bottle of essential oils, it's yummy stuff, Tara, some wellness stuff. It's rest, and it just feels very calming. But if we were inside, if you're on YouTube, you get to see my bottle. If we were actually like the essential oils and stuff inside this bottle, we would not be able to read the label on the outside. And by the way, I got this analogy from my advisor, Mark Levy. He uses this all the time and he's so spot on. He's like, you can't read the label when you're inside the bottle. So conscious investor, you're inside the bottle. Everybody else is seeing the beauty, like, oh, wow, that's great marketing, great branding. Like, whoa, that looks good. Oh, look at all the ingredients. These are the right kind of scents and such that I would want for rest. That makes sense. And so if we're inside the bottle, we cannot see that. We cannot see the fullness and the beauty. And so often what we do see, and I'm tilting this ever so slightly. So if you are on YouTube, it's kind of doing a prism effect, but here we go. You can kind of see that if we were inside the bottle, the label would look blank. It just looks like a blank label. And a lot of times we treat ourselves as blanks. We're inside the bottle. We're looking at the back of that label, and the back of that label just looks completely blank. And so we're like, yeah, definitely not a high performer, definitely not a 10. That's not me. And so what we really have to do is start teasing this apart. And we have to say, what does this look like if I step out? If I were outside this bottle and I were looking at the bottle, what does that look like now? But it takes effort and intention for us to be able to do that step out the bottle experience and actually look. One thing that my awesome advisor, Mark Levy, had me do, and I have had other, people do this, coaching clients at the Wish Fulfillment Experience. We started our day with this activity. I've done this in different settings, and that is, okay, hey, I want you to make a list. Now, when I did it with Mark, I had to make a list of 100 successes, and it felt painful at first. It was very challenging at first. And then I started to see myself from outside the bottle, and I was like, wow, look at all these cool things I'm doing. And that's generally what happens when we start actually writing down, well, I did that and I did that and look what I did. Maybe it's I was able to, have that investment take place. I was able to show up for my spouse when I was tired and fatigued. I was able to support my child when they called and they needed something at school, which normally I wouldn't do, but I needed to do this to support them. Maybe it's I was able to be there for a friend. Now those relational elements are a little bit easier for us to be like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I did a good job." But when it comes to our work, when it comes to our business, the things that are actually tactile, we start to, oh no, because we know that there are so many other people that are better than us. And guess what? There will always be people that are better than us out there. And the moment you may reach the pinnacle, the mountaintop experience, it's not going to last long because somebody else is going to, one up you. They're going to climb the mountain faster, do something better. And that's just the nature of it. So what we do need to do is we need to look at what is our unit of measurement. So going back to the Passage to 2025 group, I adore all of the members. Like the energy in that group is just phenomenal. And everyone just has such huge hearts and is so motivated. And they're all doing these extraordinary, they're making so much movement in life. It's fun, it's phenomenal and it's exciting. And that's because that's how they're wired and how they're driven. And so I kind of teased apart and I asked permission first. I said, hey, can we tease this apart a little bit further? Okay, yeah, go ahead. And I said, I think this is going to be helpful for everybody. I don't think you're the only person who's underrating yourself. And so he really served as the role model, the guinea pig that, we start pulling this apart. And I said, well, with that project at work, are you doing everything within your wheelhouse? Everything within your control? Okay, yes, I am. Are you doing? And we go through this checklist to see what's in your control, what's outside of your control. Did you drop the ball? Like, how are you coming up with I'm a 7 if you're doing all of the things that are within your control? And it turns out that this particular member was able to raise the rating. And there was a legit reason why this person did not give themselves a 10. And I'm never going to tell people, yeah, you should give yourself a 10. Like, actually, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe a 9 or an 8 is more appropriate. But something that we forget as highly motivated individuals is that our 10, our 10 is very different than others. So like if you are giving yourself a 6 or a 7, for most people in the world, that right there, your 6 or 7 is actually a 10. And we don't see that. So I want you to think in your position, and we actually came up with this particular person in the cohort. And it was, okay, if you were removed from this position, what would happen? And there was this aha, well, a very humble, well, actually, some people have in some higher ups have actually said that I am the only person that can, perform on this position. So like what? That's a big deal. And a lot of times we don't recognize that in ourselves. Now, here's what was cool is that as we were having this dialogue, some of the other members were also chiming in like, oh, that's me. And so because they self-identified with these things, I was able to include them in this conversation and say like, yeah, okay, so, hey, this is going to apply to you. Like, everybody, let's make sure we're thinking about this. This question isn't just for this one person. And we did some personal applications. Most everyone was able to rapidly raise their level, their awareness of who they are and what they bring to the table simply by stepping outside the bottle, by looking at the label. Now, you're probably still like, Julie, really, I'm still a 6. Here's the other element that's really important to keep in mind with this is that because we are highly motivated conscious investors. You can't see this because look, if you're watching on YouTube, my hands are like completely out of the screen. We set the bar so high for ourselves. We're really motivated and we know that we can do it. But we set the bar so high that we're constantly reaching. Now, if you're at the gym or something, or you're in a position to where you can lift your hands, and even if you're driving, you might be able to lift one hand up. If you leave your hands outstretched at their max for a long time, it gets tiring. It gets really tiring. And so we put this demand on ourselves across the board in our life. And we're like, nope, you got to keep going, higher, 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 higher. And we kind of shift that on ourselves. That's really not fun. Another way we can consider this is that if we were at the gym and we were doing some squats and we have, a bar and we load it up with weights and we're just like, okay, just keep squatting, just keep doing it more and more and more and more. At what point, right? We've talked about that before. At what point is enough? What is our enough point? Are we moving the goalposts? Those are 2 separate podcast episodes. We have been talking about this topic. And so we can really wear ourselves out and discourage ourselves. We're so ambitious. We don't want to thwart our ambition, but we can set some different goals. And so I think of the Frog and Toad. Do you remember that book, Frog and Toad? I think it was Friends Together, or something like that. And there's this part where Frog has a box of cookies, and it's all about self-control. And so he's like, I got to put these cookies away. He ties a string around the box, and then he climbs up on a ladder and puts it on the top shelf in the kitchen. And I think about this, right? You probably also climbed on the counters as a kid to get something that was out of reach. And so a lot of times we're doing that. We're stretching ourselves out on our tippy toes, hands outstretched, trying to get what we want to get. And we're missing everything that is at eye level. or counter level, if you want to think of it in those terms. And so we're so busy looking up that we're not even seeing what is right before us and everything that we are contributing and adding and all the amazing things that we are doing. So I want you to consider that you will go further faster if you're not constantly trying to go for the top bar, the top shelf. But if you are going for something where it's in your comfort zone and you're like, oh, I can reach and grab that. If you were in your kitchen and you were reaching to get a glass for some water on the upper cabinet, that's not a hard thing. You know you can do it. And so psychologically, it shifts us. We're like, oh, I know I can do that. That's easy. So now we don't have task reluctance. We're not avoiding anything. We're like, oh, yeah, that's easy. I can get it done. We're going to get so much more done because we're not trying to exasperate ourselves, right? And so we can dial it back. Now, how does all of that relate to I'm a 10? Well, this is, wow, I don't know, 45 plus years of growth and learning for me. But for the first time ever in my life, I was able to give myself a 10. And I felt really great about it. So when I hosted the Wish Fulfillment Experience at my home a couple of weeks ago, one of my really close friends, one of my core 4 members, was there at the experience. And she hung out afterwards. I asked her to. I said, can I get some feedback from you? Because we are so close and she knows my greater vision. It's like, okay, this is a great person to ask and just to get some initial feedback. And she asked me, she said, well, how would you rate this? How would you rate this whole thing on a scale of 1 to 10, how you pulled this off? And I paused and I said, actually, I'd give it a 10. And she's like, that's cool. And she's like, I think I'd give it a 9.5 because, there's always room to grow. Uh-huh. I know. You just had that, like, you were already thinking that, weren't you, conscious investor? Right. And so here she is. She and I used to think like that. I used to always think, oh, well, I've got to add that margin for that buffer for growth. But because I've been doing this work and particularly on the heels of working with different coaching clients in Passage to 2025 and otherwise on looking at themselves for who and what they bring to the table. And so I told her, I said, well, I can see that, but here's why I'm giving myself a 10. I'm giving myself a 10 because I've never put anything like this together again. It took me into my comfort zone and I went there and I organized it and I created it. I overcame a lot of hurdles in order to put this together and it went really well. Everything that I wanted to, all the topics and everything were covered. It was a meaningful time for everyone. Everyone said they felt like, wow, this is valuable. We want to get together again in 6 months and just do a check-in and see how everybody is and continue our growth, right? And so I knew that to me was the ultimate. I checked the box because they connected with each other, they connected with themselves, and they grew. Those are my goals. I'm like, okay, that's a 10. And here's where it wouldn't be a 10. And I was explaining all of this to my best friend. I said, if at the next wish fulfillment experience, I don't apply some of the things that I noticed and recognized, there are things where it could be improved. But I didn't know that. And I wouldn't know that if I hadn't gone through this exact process. So if at the next wish fulfillment experience, I don't take that learning and apply it, then that experience cannot be a 10. It won't be a 10 because I have new knowledge, understanding, insights that are going to direct the path. And so maybe the next one, if I don't apply that, is going to be an 8, a 7, a 9.5. It might shift it. But if I can apply everything that I know, everything that's in my control, and I can move forward with that, I can have a 10. Now, here's the deal. What is wrong with having a 10? What is wrong with seeing yourself for who you are? It felt so good because that's the first time that I've ever confidently said, it's a 10 and here's why. And here's why it wouldn't be a 10 moving forward. But this one, this right here, this was a 10. And so I want you to think about that in your own life, conscious investor. Are you measuring your rating of yourself based upon final outcomes? So if you're working on a long project, you might be comparing yourself to the end product versus some benchmark goals along the way. Well, if it's going to take a year to fulfill this wish in my life, and I'm on pace to do that at this point, I'm a 10. I'm doing everything in my control. I'm on track. I'm achieving all of my benchmarks. That's a 10. I'm a 10 along the way. And the thing is that snowballs and it creates excitement and energy. Now, here's the deal. A lot of times we misappropriate the word humility. Humility is not, I'm not good at that. Don't look at that's actually the biggest form of ego we could possibly bring to the table. When you hear someone self-deprecating, when you hear someone deflecting the compliments that you're really good at this. When you see someone who can't look in the mirror and can't tell you that's a legit solid that's a 8, then you know that someone is still doing some work on the ego. So ego is actually the one that looks really gross and it comes disguised a lot of times as humility. Oh no, not me. No, that's ego. Let's step into true humility. True humility, it takes so much humility to say, thank you. I agree. I am really good at that. And that's one of the gifts that I was given. And this is how I'm so grateful I get to use this. Does that sound a little more humble than, oh no, I'm not good at this. I'm not good. Because one's drawing more attention to it and maybe even some false compliments and some building up in a false way, right? And say, or maybe even in a legit, sincere way, but it's not, it's very, very different. A lot of people mistake confidence, humble confidence, for ego. And a lot of times, you and I, as highly motivated people, a lot of times we don't know how to receive the fullness of our gifts. And we do the world a disservice. Imagine if I had, we'll use the easy one, if I had the cure for cancer, and I was like, "Oh, no, I don't know. I mean, it works, but there's still so much more I wanna do with it. It's really I know that it works and it heals people, but, there's so much more. It's just not good enough. It's just" man, we'd be like, "What the heck? Like, let's get this cure for cancer to the world. Let's make sure everybody has it," right? And so people won't know how you integrate into the world at large and into the world around you if they don't know what it is that you do and what you do well and what brings you joy. And so the more you are willing to say like, wow, I'm a master carpenter and I'm really good at it. My clients love their work. For me, I'm a really great coach and my clients appreciate and value the way I'm able to ask meaningful questions that create change in their life, right? Like, wow, when people know what it is that you do that you're good at, now they're going to connect to you. So recently I love connecting people. I know you know that already. And so I've made a few different connections in the last week and it was, oh, well, I have this friend that is in the marketing has, marketing agency type world. And I just made this other connection that's in that space. And I think they're actually really aligned. I think that they'd be like, I need to just connect these people because I know what they love I know what they're good at, and I know a little bit about what makes them tick, it's like, oh my gosh, I have to connect these people. People won't be able to connect you with where you will shine brightly and contribute greatly to the world if they don't know what it is that you do great. So you can see we're actually hurting ourselves and hurting the world that we say we care about by playing small, by saying, I'm not, I just, I just need to get better. There's just a little bit more. Don't let false humility, don't let ego masquerading as humility um, prevent you from the greatest successes and greatest contributions in the world. You don't need to have your arms stretched up all the time because I just have to keep going so much higher. No, look around at eye level. Where can I serve? Keep it light, keep it easy breezy, right? Because it doesn't need to be hard. Go back to that episode because I'm kind of done with everything having to be so hard because life already is hard. So, how do we lighten it up? How do we create the momentum? We see ourselves exactly for who we are created to be. We look at ourselves from the outside so we can see that label and the beauty, and we don't see the blank label on the inside. And we get to be on the inside also. I always joke that I'm like the champagne bubbles on the inside of the bottle. I just am so excited. Um, and so we want to see ourselves for who we are, for what we bring. We want to lower our expectations. Yeah, we don't have to be at the top of Everest. Like there is plenty of beautiful things to do right here. And we will do more of it because it'll feel to you light and effortless and fun. So you're going to do more of it. Now, one more thought on that is that we've talked about this before, but it's a perfect point to remind you that what seems effortless and easy for you is probably somebody else's like, oh my gosh, this is the hardest thing in the world. If you want me to design a really high functioning Excel spreadsheet, whoa, you're looking at the wrong person. But if you want someone to speak in a way that will help people connect dots that lead to change and transformation, I can use my words really well, right? And so a lot of times I would rate you, my beautiful Excel spree creators of the world, and we can put that in a lot of different ways, right? If you're better at something than I am, I'm going to rate you as at least a 10. I'll probably say you broke the scale and you're, a 15. And you who might feel uncomfortable, speaking in public and going on the podcast and, coming up and delivering ideas, you might be like, oh my gosh, Julie's the 10 at that. Right. And so I know that when it comes to Excel spreadsheets, let's be real. I'm going to say I'm probably a 4. And I think that's me being very, very honest. I know basics. So for me, I definitely value everyone who is a 10 in that space. Just as people who might not have the skills for coaching or speaking or managing large investments, they might be like, oh, wow, I'm a 4 at this, but I'm so grateful that Julie's a 10 at this, right? And that's where we start to really create cohesiveness in our relationships where it's fun. It's like, I'm going to send this over to you because you are the genius at it. And it goes back and forth. Conscious investor, you are a 10. And I would love for you to let me know where you found at a 10 or more in your life this week. The 10 shouldn't be elusive. It shouldn't be difficult to get, to attain. It should be something that you're comfortable and it's light and it's effortless because you're seeing yourself in the light of the project in a given moment. This is where I'm at. And actually, in this moment, I'm operating at a 10, and that's exactly where I need to be. I'm going to stay here. So I'm going to give you a friendly opportunity head on over to Instagram, like post a picture of you where you find yourself as a 10 and tag the Conscious Investor podcast, because I want to see you shine and I want to cheer you along. It's not just Julie over here, talking in her studio alone to you, Conscious Investor. Like, we're in this together and I'm rooting for you. And I'm so excited for your successes. And I'm excited for you to step into the true humility that you were designed for. You were created to be a 10 at one, maybe more than one thing. That's how you were designed. Your DNA is your pre-qualification that God gave you. Like, hey, here you go. Here are your ingredients. And one of these is like going to just be wow. Okay. That doesn't mean you have to be some influencer or a mega millionaire or something. You're a wow. And the world has it so crazy. Like, that might not be a 10. Those people might not actually be living their 10, they're into their tens, like might look that way. So just know, like, rate yourself for where you are, for who you are. You are amazing, Conscious Investor. Hey, I want you to know that I deeply value your support with the show. This show doesn't grow without you. I'm not throwing a bunch of ad money at this or anything, because I believe in you, Conscious Investor. And I just want to ask you to take a moment and share this episode or another episode with just one person. Just let them know, I really got something from this episode, or I think that this one would benefit you. And if we all do that in a single day, we double the size of the show. And that is not a numbers thing. I'm not a numbers chaser at all. It's not a matter of that really truly isn't a matter of false ego. It's not, oh, I want all these numbers so that I'm this person. What happens is that the show actually reaches more people, and that supports more people. And that's my number one goal. I would love to reach people around the world who are trying to step into who they're created to be, people like you and I, Conscious Investor. And so we can do that by sharing the podcast. And when each of us just share it with one person, then we grow and expand the footprint of the ideas, and we support more and more and more people. And the other element is that, yeah, it will trigger things within different platforms where it will help. They will help us get the show out to reach more people. So thank you so much for your support, Conscious Investor. Remember, if you head on over to 3keysinvestments.com, you can schedule time with me. I'm fixing up the other websites. There are some broken links and such. And so I apologize for that, which is why I'm sending over to 3 Keys. And so schedule some time for us to talk about your investing. If you want to talk about coaching, I have some really cool opportunities that I am releasing for 2025. And people are going to the next level. And I cannot even wait to cheer, support, challenge, and encourage everyone along the way. Until next time, Conscious Investor, live in the fullness of freedom.